What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators online show and a rapid reaction for you guys as Florida has picked up its second commitment of the week here on this almost Friday evening as Elijhah Badger, Arizona State wide receiver, second time in the last 3 years that the Gators have landed one from Arizona State, Nick. And the last one worked out pretty well. And the Gators also land Cormani McClain this week. Their highest rated transfer in the 2024 class. So we will discuss some of that decision as well. But the news of the day is the Badger, Nick.
Florida's got a couple Badgers, Elijhah, DK, Graham. This is time to jump around in Gainesville, Zach. It's a big commitment. It's been a big week for Florida. We went into this spring portal season saying Florida needed to upgrade or wanted to upgrade tight end, interior offensive line, and receiver. You get a walk-on in Caleb Rios, Jason Zamandela. I don't know that he's an instant impact, but a future starter, one of the best interior offensive linemen, and only a freshman. You get 5 years to play for there, and then you go and you get one of the best, probably the best remaining receiver. And shout out to Ricky Pearsall. I know that he was in contact here. And certainly what Ricky was able to do at Florida last year played its own hand in helping the recruitment as well.
No doubt. Could not have had things time up more perfectly for Florida in terms of Ricky going in the first round. But not just that, his production as well. Being able to boost his draft stock as a senior, almost have 1,000-yard season. To have that guy who played with Elijhah at Arizona State working the phones and trying to get him to Gainesville, that was some extra help that the Gators surely needed. Because, look, don't get it twisted, folks. This was not just a slam dunk for Florida. Arizona was coming really hard at this guy, was, I think, offered more or certainly the same as Florida did in terms of an NIL standpoint. And the connection here. The wide receivers coach at Arizona was his wide receivers coach at Arizona State. So that was a lot for Florida to overcome, but being able to move on to the SEC and come test himself at this level, I think is probably, best for Badger. So we'll get into that decision, what it means for Florida's wide receiver room and many more. But before we do that, I want to give everybody a heads up about this code that we've got going on right now, this promo for only our podcast listeners here on YouTube and those listening on all the different platforms. If you're not subscribed to Gators Online, you can use the code UF1 to get 2 months of premium access for just $1. And all of our subscribers, if they were paying attention this past week, knew everything that was coming as it relates to Cormani, everything that was coming as it relates to Badger, and now that Florida's 2024 class is officially finalized, things are really going to heat up on the 2025 front. Before you know it, Nick and I are going to be previewing the 2024 season and getting you ready for the fall. So definitely a time that you want to get in right now. And if you're not subscribed, again, use the code UF1 when you go to sign up, and you can get 2 months for just $1. Now I'm going to switch this up here for our viewers right now live as we give you guys a rapid reaction here as Florida lands Elijhah Badger, and he is now the second wide receiver that they've landed in the 2024 class, Nick. But despite getting Shamir DK, who is a go-to target from Graham Mertz at Wisconsin, probably going to start in the slot, they needed to add more in this spring cycle. It was probably their biggest priority. And I think they checked that box with Badger.
Yeah, we've been saying it all along. Everyone knows what Eugene Wilson is, including the 12 defensive coordinators Florida will play in 2024. And you needed to get an option, somebody that could take the attention off of Eugene Wilson. Florida's happy with Shamir DK. They're happy with Khalil Jackson, Marcus Burke, Andy Jean, Aiden Mizell. They're happy with these guys, but none of those guys will keep Miami's defensive coordinator, Texas's defensive coordinator up on a Thursday night worrying about his game plan. I think when you get Elijhah Badger, it's a 6'2", 190-pound receiver, had 24 explosive catches last year. caught 41 of Arizona State's 145 first downs. This is a guy who catches the ball away from his body, great hands, gets yards after the catch, and gets separation, something that has been sporadic with Florida receivers. So now you have somebody to put on the other side of Trey Wilson. And I think Badger can play in the slot. Trey Wilson can play in the slot. They both can play outside as well. That's something that Trey is going to be trying to do or wants to do and show that he's capable of this season. So I think, we talked about this when we broke down the Cormani commitment earlier this week. I thought Badger is a more immediate and pressing need and would be a bigger pickup than Cormani, despite Cormani having the name recognition given his wild commitment and recruitment over the last 2 years. So I think it's a huge spot for Florida.
I think it's interesting how the recruiting cycle in 2024 played out for Florida as it relates to the wide receiver position, because as we've said, this was a priority coming out of the 2023 season. Not only were they losing Ricky Pearsall, but remember, Caleb Douglas decided to transfer as well, and that was a starter for them at wide receiver. So they needed to get some talent to fill that void. And looking back on it, they targeted a handful of guys, Nick. I spoke to you about this earlier today, but you think about Malik Benson, CJ Daniels. Those are two guys that they hosted for official visits in January at the receiver spot. Two transfers that ended up, Benson went to FSU, Daniels went to LSU. They also, made a run at Ja'Cory Brooks, former Alabama receiver who kind of made a surprise signing with Louisville. And, they ended up only getting DK in that winter portal period, which was still an important get considering his history with Graham and getting a guy there for that slot position. DK does have some speed, but they needed to add somebody that could be a little bit more of an impact player and make a difference in terms of, how, like you said, Nick, how defensive coordinators are going to prepare for Florida. And you look in the spring portal, there were actually some guys on the board that would have fit that bill, most notably Keandre Lambert-Smith. He was a guy that Florida made contact with, the former Penn State receiver, before he went with Auburn. And for those that were following these recruitments closely, even Justice Ross Simmons was another guy that was actually scheduled for an official visit. Some great issues, I think, came up in terms of maybe him being able to get into school. He goes ahead and commits to Syracuse. And at that point, Nick, we didn't know what Florida was going to do. It looked like, hey, that they might just not get another receiver. And I want to say it was only 3 days before Ross Simmons committed to Syracuse, Badger entered the portal. Just 3 days before he kind of came off the board. So once he was out of the picture, clearly Badger ascended to the top of their board and became a priority for the staff. They were able to get him on campus for an official visit this week. But if you just look at the rankings, Nick, and the production, I mean, of all the receivers that Florida targeted, both in the spring and in the winter, Badger is probably the best that they could have gotten, other than, Keandre Lambert-Smith is probably the only guy that was maybe better, and he was ranked higher. But, I mean, this is a good get for Florida, one, considering where he's ranked, but two, considering all those guys that they took a swing on and weren't able to get. To end up with Badger when it's all said and done, that's got to feel pretty good for this staff.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. You can just tell by the way they were moving, bringing guys in, the importance they thought it was of adding another piece. And we've been getting a lot of questions, some pushback of what do you mean they need somebody? There's Andy Jean, there's Aiden Mizell. It's yeah, I get that, but these are unproven guys. We think they're going to be good. We project that they will turn into good players, but you're looking for a proven guy who instantly can come in and play. And I think Badger
the last 2 years, Badger has 135 catches for almost 1,600 yards and 10 touchdowns. I mean, that's production versus potential, to your point, Nick.
Boom. That's bars. Zach Abolverdi dropping bars. It's I think he's a guy that comes in right away. Right now, leaving spring, Florida's starting 3 wide receivers were DK, Khalil, Eugene Wilson. Eugene Wilson's locked in. Use a Sharpie. You can take a chisel to some stone outside and carve in Eugene Wilson's name on the depth chart. It's not going anywhere. I think right now Badger steps in and Khalil Jackson and Shamir DK are on notice. Someone is coming to get your reps, to get your starting spot.
And I'll just
Competition.
chime in. I don't think it's going to be DK. Like I just think his relationship with Graham, Nick, is that counts for a lot. And it's going to be hard to keep him out of the starting lineup, and it's going to be hard to keep him off the field, especially on third down. Like early on in the year, Graham's going to be looking to him as much as anybody else. He's going to have more chemistry with DK and Eugene Wilson early than he will with Badger. That's going to have to develop. But remember, Khalil Jackson is a former walk-on, so he came in obviously and earned that scholarship. But I mean, the opportunity is there for Badger to get a starting job. Like that's why he came to Florida. Florida's got guys that have talent, that are capable, that can make plays at the receiver spot, but they just don't have enough proven production. I mean, Khalil Jackson has shown that he might have the best hands on the team, but outside of him and the starts that he's made, like there's not a lot behind him. I mean, there's a bunch of guys that Florida thinks is going to be really good, and maybe some that will emerge this fall. But you're talking about a guy who is a 2-year starter. He's been in college for several years. He's developed. He's going to come in right away and make an impact and make Florida better at wide receiver. So
we'll have probably two more things on this too. Is one, the back injury that caused him to lose some games, missed out on spring. Florida knows about it, wanted to get him on campus, and everything they got on it made them feel comfortable to continue pursuing him. Some people had said other schools looked at it and backed off. Florida, from when we heard Zach, feel comfortable with everything they got medical wise. And then two, hats off to Billy Napier and the staff, because you're over the scholarship limit after playing a couple of years under the limit. Yeah. Now you're going to be at 86 with Badger on scholarship. You've already gotten a former 5-star Cormani McClain to walk on. NIL will take care of that, and I think we're going to get into some weird and funky roster movements until they figure some things out with guys, with being over the limit and NIL taking care of things. But Florida will have to have some conversations and figure out the scholarships. But if I'm a fan of a team, I'd rather them have to have those hard conversations than going into August with 80 guys on scholarship.
That's a great point. And Nick, as you mentioned, Badger, I mean, when you look at Florida's transfers, I mean, I don't know where you would rank him in terms of like most important and impactful transfers that they've landed. Now, it's hard to say that now because, one, we haven't seen him play, and two, we don't know the status that he'll be at coming off of that back injury. But assuming, Nick, that he is healthy and returns to form and can put up the numbers at Arizona State that he did at Florida, if not more, where do you feel like this pickup and acquisition ranks in terms of portal additions that this staff has gotten? I mean, obviously Osiris Torrance is up there.
Yeah.
Graham Mertz in hindsight is up there. But like,
I'll just do it for this year right now, Zach. Like, Asa Turner is going to be a starter. In my mind, Elijah Badger is a starter. So I'm putting him with Asa Turner and Brandon Crenshaw Dixon. I think those three are probably your
most
S-tier.
impactful.
Your most impactful, your most important. In terms of future, you probably look at Jason Zamandela, Cormani McClain. Cormani McClain, I don't think is going to start for Florida, but you're going to see a bunch of him in the fall, in my opinion. But in terms of, if I had to pick a top three, I think the biggest three they signed this for this coming season will be Brandon Crenshaw Dixon, who's going to start at right tackle, Asa Turner, who's going to start at safety, and then Elijah Badger, who I think will start. Forgot about Pup Howard, Grayson Howard. I'm adding a fourth into my top tier. I make the rules, so I will do a top 4 impactful there.
And we will get into Florida's transfer class as a whole and break it down. But this does put the finishing touches on Florida's 2024 class. They have no more scholarships to give, and they filled their needs too.
And Katie Turner tweeted it too. She tweeted the 24 class is complete. So thank you for finishing that. Also, shout out to Elijhah Badger for committing right as Luke Heyman hit a 3-run homer to keep Florida's baseball season alive, but not a baseball show. But coincidence.
Yeah, maybe he timed it up that way. He was just waiting.
Oh yeah, he was probably streaming the game, watching like I was.
He knew that you were covering, because I can't put this news out until Nick is ready to report on it. Shout out to Badger.
Shout out to the Money Badger.
How many Badger GIFs are we going to see this fall all over Gators Twitter?
The limit does not exist.
Congrats to Elijhah. Congrats to the Florida staff on getting this done. And he will, Nick, I still think has one more class to take, or one or two more with Arizona State. So he won't get here just yet.
Yeah, it should be here in the summer. From what I was told, it's like 6 credits, 2 classes. But I don't even want to. We shouldn't even have brought this up, Zach. It's a celebration day. Let's not talk about 6 credits.
Well, it's just good to know that he
He
won't be here. So that does it. We will switch topics here and talk about Cormani McClain, because last time we did a show, Nick, we were just looking forward to Elijhah, and Cormani kind of comes out of nowhere and becomes all of a sudden the biggest target in Florida's transfer class, and their biggest, most highest rated. Now his situation is unique. We've covered it at length. You and Keith and Corey have done some reactions, but I do want to talk about this now that we've had some time to digest it and see how Florida was able to add Cormani to their secondary. And what was your reaction, Nick, when you saw that he was back in play for Florida, had taken this surprise visit to campus and was back in play?
Here we go again. That has to be the initial reaction, right? Like, oh man, here we go again. Back on the Money McClain roller coaster. It was my initial reaction. To me, my initial reaction was, he's not a bad kid. Like, he's not getting in trouble. Just seems to, and like he wasn't even a kid that, like, during his high school recruitment liked the attention. Didn't like all the attention that he got. I think he just went out to Colorado, and he's a kid who has a really close relationship with his mom. And probably went out, got enamored with playing for, in my opinion, the best cornerback to ever play football in Deion Sanders. Got enamored with it. And then you got to Colorado, and it starts snowing in November. And you're like, what the hell is happening here? There's also the pressure that, after talking to Ahmad Black, who coached him his senior year at Lakeland, Ahmad's like, you're going through DB drills with the best to ever do it watching you. Like, there's stress at practice. And I think, being away from home, a totally different culture. What is the culture at Colorado? Like, Ahmad told me when he got in, his first day of class at Florida was when they were coming back from the national championship celebration. He goes, and those boys come back from that, and they immediately tell us, this is what's expected of you. This is what you do not do. This is what happens to you if you do something on the do not do list. This is how we handle ourselves. In Colorado right now, just because it's a coach who's a first-time Division I head coach, they're building that culture. You don't know what the expectations are. So I think it's a great move for Cormani. You get back home. I think he's a little bit humbled by the way everything transpired when he was in the transfer portal as well. You went from everybody wanting you in high school to you get in the portal after high school, or after 1 year of college, and that same love is just not there. I think that's humbling. I think coming to Florida as a walk-on with having to earn a scholarship and having something to prove, I think that should do a lot for the young man.
Yep.
He's a hard worker. Ahmad Black spent like an hour on the phone with Ahmad on Thursday. Ahmad raved about this kid for all the headlines that goes around. He says this kid is not afraid to work hard. So I think you're getting, in Florida's opinion, they've told us it's almost a no risk situation. You're getting a former 5-star, a kid with all the talent in the world and a chip on his shoulder to come in to earn a scholarship at your school. So Florida views it as a no risk, high reward. And I think the only knock I have is like, kids got to eat. You got to put some weight on. I can tell him how to do it.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's the kind of weight that he wants to put on, but like the only knock on Cormani is that you're 6'2", 160. You probably want to get to like 180, 185. But super talented player. And the point of bringing him and Badger in on Tuesday for their official visit was Florida started the Monday before. They brought the team back. Workout started Tuesday, and it was a chance to get both guys in and around the team to see how they interacted, and then ask the leaders on your team, yo, what's the vibe? Can we add this kid into our locker room?
And if you guys are paying attention to the thumbnail here on this YouTube video, this is not the first time that Cormani McClain and Elijah Badger have crossed paths. That is, in fact, Cormani McClain making a stop against Badger in that picture there. I actually noticed that looking on Cormani's page when he posted some stuff from his Florida visit, and I saw that.
We hope it's a stop, Zach. If not, then then my goodness.
Well, Cormani posted it on his page, so I'm assuming that if he posted it there, he made the play. I don't think he posted. I would hope he wouldn't post a missed tackle. But you're getting two guys that have crossed paths. A few things on Cormani. First of all, there is no question about him earning a scholarship, or put it like this: if they had the room, he would be on scholarship. Like, this is not you're going to have to earn it from a sense of checking box X, Y, and Z. Now, can he come in, given his current situation, and go the wrong route and then not even get to the point where he gets put on scholarship? Yes, but I don't think that it would be again, if they had a scholarship open, he would be on scholarship right now 100%. This is simply because they don't have the room, and it does create a dynamic though where he is kind of having to come in and work for it, so to speak. But I mean, the high risk or the low risk, high reward is so real, because I mean, you're talking about a guy who, in the 3 years that Billy and the staff have been recruiting, this was probably one of their top overall targets the whole time. In the portal,
this recruitment was crazy. They had Florida State had Randy Shannon looking like a hostage. Mike Norvell holding a cake, singing
shout out
happy
to Silk
birthday
for bringing that back.
Singing happy birthday to Cormani. Like, Cormani McClain had grown men going crazy on social media. Like we really forget how wild the Cormani McClain high school roller coaster was.
Yeah. And I was there. I was embedded waiting on a video to drop that never got to drop.
You finally got to drop the
I did, but
the Lost Files.
The Lost Files. Shout out to Keith for encouraging me to put that out. But yes, this, like, Cormani McClain, DJ Lagway, LJ McCray. I have to go back and look at their other classes, but like, those might be the top 3 targets that they've had in general since they've been a staff here. I see, Lagway, McCray, and McClain. I think I have to go back and look. I mean, and I'm not trying to knock anybody else, but I mean, those were, man, if we get those guys, that changes the trajectory of our program type recruits. And
which one of them says ain't no top 3, it's just a top me?
Cormani.
Shout out to K Dot.
Yes, shout out to K-Dot. And shout out to, by the way, Sean Momberger, for those that were paying attention to that commitment video. That music that you were listening to being produced on that Cormani McClain commitment video, that same producer helped produce Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar. So cool little anecdote
Zach is
there.
tied in.
Tied in, baby.
Zach's tied in.
But yeah, man, like this was such an important recruit for Florida when he was in high school. Obviously, when he became available in the portal, I know that they contacted him as early as 2 days after he entered the portal. Was probably before that. Like they started recruiting him immediately, and I don't think that any of us realized how quickly this was coming together, Nick.
No tampering. Definitely waited till he was in the portal.
Of course. But man, I do want to say, like, some of the narratives out there about Cormani and some of the negative publicity and what have you, like, does he have some growing up and maturing to do? Absolutely. And I think that, some of his former coaches, both in high school and college, would be the first ones to tell you that. But we're talking about a guy, Nick, that needs to show up on time and, get more on top of his responsibilities. Things that all 18, 19-year-old kids struggle with in some shape or form, maybe some more than others. But like, he's kind of been crucified in the media for missing meetings and showing up late. Now, I'm not trying to downplay some of those decisions and things that he did, but like, it's not like this guy has, committed a bunch of crimes or been an issue in the locker room or this is a dude that is a hard worker, is humble, he's quiet and reserved. He wants to put his head down and just go do his job. And again, he's got some growing up and maturing to do, and he definitely needs to be around the right people and the right mentors and the right structure to bring the best out of him. But I don't think that Billy and this staff feel like he's the type of kid that has the potential to be a cancer in the locker room or has the type of red flags that you are really, really concerned about what might happen if you add him to the mix. Like I just think he needs to be around some guys that are going to rub off on him the right way, and maybe have some different type of coaching and mentorship that's a different style than what he was getting at Colorado with Deion Sanders. And I think he'll get that with Will Harris. I think Will Harris is going to deal with him differently and work with him differently and be more patient with him. Now, Will Harris is as hard as they come, so I'm not saying he's going to baby him, but like it's just different. He is different than Deion Sanders in every way, shape, or form. So I just think a change of scenery, being back in an environment that he feels comfortable in, around players that are more like him, that he fits with personality-wise, I just think it's a good fit. And for Cormani McClain to be the best player and person that he can be, being at the University of Florida and in this environment, in this structure, is probably his best bet. And I think he and his mom came to that same conclusion, which is why he's willing to walk on at Florida at first, as opposed to going somewhere else and being on scholarship right away. And I think that says a lot about him and his, making a mature decision is a wise call.
Yeah, I know I'm glad I didn't have the same kind of attention surrounding the decisions I made when I was 18, 19 years old. I think we've heard a lot from Florida about the culture and how it's taken so long to build, but I think it's in a great place. And I don't think Cormani ruins that culture, but if you bring one player in and it ruins the culture, it's not as good as you think it was. And Florida's thought process is getting him closer to his mom, his support system, the person that's always in his corner, and then providing him the structure that you've put in place over 3 years at Florida. They think that will help lead him down the right path. Now, listen, it's going to come down to Cormani. You have to make the decisions for yourself. You have to walk the line and do all the right things. You can have everything, all the resources in the world, and have everything handed to you, but you're the one that has to do it. And that's why I mentioned earlier when I think, hey, you're getting a player who's maybe been a little bit humbled, one that's ready to work and that is coming in with a chip on his shoulder. And I know that's an overused, saying at this point, but I think if you look back at from the time he was a senior at Lakeland to the way his recruitment went down to playing playing for the most talked about team for probably the first 4 or 5 weeks, and then people asking where you were and what's going on, and you leave, and all of a sudden your coach is like shading players that leave on Twitter and on social media. I think and what Florida thinks is that you're putting Cormani into a much healthier situation, where he will have all the resources to develop himself into a future NFL player. But ultimately it falls on the player's shoulders. You can only get so much help, and the help can only help you if you want to be helped.
I'll give a shout out to My Perfect Franchise as we continue this conversation. If you're ready to leave the corporate rat race for the American dream, looking for a side hustle while working your current job, wanting to diversify, build wealth, and or leave a legacy, Andy can help. He's a franchise consultant as well as a franchise owner and helps people find franchises that fit their skill sets, financial requirements, time to commit, and more. His services are 100% free, and he's here to help if you have any questions about business ownership with franchises. You can learn more and contact Andy anytime at myperfectfranchise.net or calling or texting him at 404-973-9901. And Cormani will be on campus very soon and enrolling this summer. The Gators started their next phase of their off-season workouts, their regimen phase on Tuesday. So he will be joining them momentarily. How do you see him fitting into this cornerback room, Nick? And what are your expectations for how early and often he'll see the field, and maybe in what type of role or rotation?
Yeah, I think your starters are Jason Marshall and Devin Moore.
Well, don't tell that to PFF.
Yeah. Now Devin Moore has been healthy for 50% of the games in the 2 years he's been on campus. He left spring healthy. He is currently healthy. This computer is sitting on wood. If you can hear that, we're knocking on it. I think Devin Moore is an all SEC type of talent, if he can just stay healthy and play football. After him, I mean, Florida's done a really good job recruiting. You've got Dijon Johnson, Aaron Gates, Sharif Denson, Jakeem Jackson. Like you're coming into a deep room. You're going to have to compete to play. I think Cormani definitely fits into that rotation, and Florida will be able to move DBs in and out of the game. But Cormani, to me, is going to have to earn a backup role behind Jason Marshall and behind Devin Moore.
Yeah, and it gives you some nice insurance there, given one Moore's history, but God forbid if anything happens to Jason or if he rolls an ankle and has to miss, a series, you got plenty of depth there now at cornerback. And I think one great thing, obviously, is that he gets to learn from those two guys. I think that they probably look at Devin Moore and Jason Marshall in that locker room as not just two of the best examples among the secondary players, but just among the team. I mean, those are like leader guys that get selected to go on the Gator made trips. So for Cormani to be spending time around those guys, playing behind them, having Jason and Devin kind of show him the ropes from Florida standpoint and kind of all the expectations and things that are required here in Gainesville, that will be beneficial. And I think that, I especially think, Jason will be good for him. You're talking about a former 5-star recruit as well, a guy that's had some ups and downs in his college career. I just think that's a great pairing right there in terms of someone maybe being a mentor to Cormani. Now, in terms of the competition aspect, I mean, there's plenty of depth that they have at corner. I would say right now that Jakeem Jackson is probably the third cornerback in the rotation, followed by Dejon Johnson. And then you got Jameer Grimsley and Teddy Foster, both of whom uh, coaches and players spoke very high of coming out of spring. Like, I think Foster was maybe one of the surprises of the spring, and he went viral obviously for that hit that he had on Eugene Wilson in practice. And I know some coaches were really impressed with him. And then Grimsley, like, you're talking about a top 100 guy coming out of high school, was at Alabama with Nick Saban, bright future with him as well. So it's not like Cormani's just going to step in and have a backup job at the very least handed to him. He is going to have to compete for it. But I do think that he's got the talent to, climb the depth chart and maybe take a job from somebody or take some snaps from somebody. It is going to be a process, though. Like, he's going to have to learn the playbook. He's going to have to get acclimated at UF. He's going to have to get in a routine and obviously take care of all of his business off the field. I think that once he can get to that point and reach, scrimmage and fall camp where he's getting opportunities to get some reps with the starters, well, then he can, take it to the next level. I think he's got to get there, though. He's got to work to the point where he's getting those reps and getting those opportunities. I have no doubt that once he gets those opportunities and puts himself in that position, that he's going to excel and that he's going to make an impact. And like, he's going to get playing time. He will be one of those first corners off the bench when they start rotating, or when they need Jason or Devin to get a breather because they just ran down a guy 40 yards to make a play. Like, Cormani is going to be not only part of that rotation, but he's going to potentially be a difference maker. And you're talking about, Nick, a secondary, and I wrote this in my impact analysis. You're talking about a secondary that gave up 20 passing plays last year of plus 40 yards. 20. That was second to last nationally. So this is a secondary that needs all the help that it can get, especially at cornerback. And at the very least, Cormani is going to create more competition.
Florida only had 3 interceptions, least in the NCAA. This is a kid in Cormani who I think started his career as a receiver. Was talking to Ahmad Black, who was blown away by what Cormani can do as a receiver, and a guy who had 10 interceptions, I think, in his junior year in high school. And now everything is tied in together. It's like your whole posterior chain. If you got bad hamstrings, you're going to end up with a bad back. If you don't get to the passer, I don't care if you've got Champ Bailey, Darrell Revis in their prime, they're not covering guys for 8, 9, 10 seconds. So you've got to get a pass rush and not put it all on the secondary. But certainly, I'm not going to jump on top of a grenade that you're lobbing if you're saying Florida secondary did not play well last year. I'm not going to fight you too hard on that.
But I think for the future, and then maybe even for the season, like, out of all those guys that they got at cornerback, man, you're going to get at least 2 good starters after Jason Marshall and Devin Moore, right? Like, at least 2, maybe 3 to 4 of those guys are going to pan out because there's just so much talent in that room. Between that and safety, Nick, they're in a much better place in their secondary. New coach too. Excited to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, total this is extreme home makeover in the secondary. New coach, 3 new safeties, 6 new corners? There are 4 new corners. Cormani, Teddy, Jameer,
yeah,
whole new house back there in the secondary.
We got Aaron Gates now, obviously has emerged at star. A lot of depth there, and obviously, look, that's going to get sorted out. I think a lot of those guys are going to play, but if you're the staff, you feel much better about where you're at. And I think that that's not just for the secondary, but the roster as a whole. Now that you look at the pieces that they've added in their 2024 class, specifically from the transfer ranks. Now, as a whole, Nick, 34 total scholarship players. you're talking about 14 transfers and 20 recruits, 21 depending on how you want to count Jameer Grimsley. But I mean, they loaded up. 3 top 100 recruits, 2 5-stars, and then 4 top 100 transfers. And Nick, as you know, like the transfer portal, Florida's approach, Florida's strategy has been a talking point with Florida fans for years now. And I got to say, things look good right now for them, right? Like Billy and the staff and Bird Sherrill, they did an exceptional job, I think, this cycle. And obviously, Billy ended up kind of getting the last laugh with Graham Mertz because this time last year, when this time last year, I think a lot of people were down on Florida's transfer class, and part of the reason was that Graham Mertz was the quarterback that they ended up with. That was part of this, I think, of people not getting as excited about what they were bringing in. Now you look at what he's done, and obviously, Ricky Pearsall being a first-round pick as a portal addition. But this 2024 class, from a transfer standpoint, is about as good as it's going to get that we've seen at Florida so far. Like, you're talking about 3 top 50 guys, 4 top 100 transfers. You get some pieces there that I think mean a little bit to Florida fans. I can expand on that a little bit, but and you hit positions of need, right? You did it during the winter portal when you were trying to bring in safeties. You needed to get offensive tackles, and they did that. They came into this spring portal, and there was, we got to get an offensive guard, a wide receiver. It was funny, and this, Nick, listening to Cole Kubelik a couple weeks ago, he did an episode, and he was like, yeah, I think this roster is pretty good. I think they just need one more offensive line, one more receiver, one more DB. And then they went out and landed all 3 of those guys at those positions. So certainly in the spring portal, you got to feel good about how it turned out. And then even going back to winter, now, did you get everybody that you wanted? No. Did they play all their cards right? Probably not. But on paper, this is Florida's best transfer class yet and could make a difference next season.
Yeah, if you go like you're going to have hits and misses in the portal. Their first class, I think, was more hit than miss. Montrell Johnson will go over 3,000 career rushing yards this year. Osiris Torrance was a consensus All-American.
We only had 5 guys, right?
Yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cam Waits. Really, the misses were Jalen Kimber, who was a former 5-star from Georgia, and Jack Miller, and maybe that plays out differently if not for his injury. 2020. Well, shoot.
But I would argue that they got more hits than that, because if they only
more hits in that class, yeah.
Because you got more Torrance and Pearsall too. I mean,
yeah, no. I said that. I said they had more hits than misses in that class. I think last year you probably have more misses than hits. Misses Lindell Hudson to Spurlock's probably to be determined. Keontae Goodwin never gets to campus, but isn't there long because of the unfortunate situation with his mother.
Yeah.
Cam Carroll, his injury, he looked really, really promising last year before the injury. Tahaja Mitchell, Jacoby Jackson, Manny Nunnery. But
Mazuka wasn't no
Mike
good.
Mazuka's certainly not a fit. Quincy Ivory, Damian George, we'll see. Maybe he changes that opinion this year.
Cam Carroll obviously is unfortunate.
RJ Moten moves from safety to linebacker. Don't know that he's in the mix this year, but home run with Graham Mertz. Nailed it with Cam Jackson. Nailed it with Caleb Banks. So more hits and misses, but that's just doing business in the portal.
Yeah.
Like, if you look at it, Florida's got a consensus All-American and a first-round pick and your starting quarterback.
And running back.
Yes. And I think what we're seeing now is, and if chat, you can let me know if I'm right or wrong, but I think what you're seeing now is the quality. That first class was so small, and most of them were guys that Florida knew because of Louisiana. When you look at Waits and Osiris and Montrell, Florida, this staff coming from UL was not recruiting the Cormani McClains at UL. And recruiting, while NIL plays a massive part, recruiting still involves relationships. And when the staff got here, they didn't have relationships or the bounce back relationships when guys would hit the transfer portal. You're seeing Florida land these bigger guys because it's guys like Cormani McClain that they had relationships with, because being at the University of Florida, you're recruiting guys at this level. So I think you're starting to see just the continuity of having a staff going into their third year, start to pay off in terms of recruiting. You're seeing it with the transfer portal class as well as the high school recruiting classes.
No doubt. And I think
Pup
one
Howard,
thing that
thanks to Malik. Pup Howard's a guy who, definitely not going to Louisville or Louisiana. Definitely not going to Louisiana. That's a guy you just finished second with. Jameer Grimsley is a guy you just finished second with that you're getting in the portal. And DeAndre Robinson. So I think you're starting to see Billy Napier and their recruiting staff start to find their footing and get a little swagger. Now you got to win football games in the fall, or else I'll be talking about the next coach in 3 years just getting into their footing. So it's certainly, in my opinion, the best roster Florida's gone into a football season with.
And one thing I think that fans and certainly the coaches probably just, makes it even sweeter about this class is 2 of the additions. And I don't want to say they like them more than any others, but like, to my earlier point about Cormani McClain, and then I'll add Grayson Pup Howard to that. Like, in the 2023 cycle, those were 2 of their top targets. Obviously, Cormani McClain was like the top target, but Pup Howard was up there. Probably their number 1 linebacker target, certainly number 1 in state. And from the city of Jacksonville, in Florida's backyard, as was Cormani McClain, and you lose both of those guys to out-of-state schools. And to be able to reel them back in and almost like right that wrong in their eyes, it's great. Like, that's obviously why you put in that much time and effort in recruiting these guys in high school, because sometimes you might finish second and they'll double back, because that's the era that we live in now with the transfer portal. So that does speak to not only being able to get those guys, but what you just mentioned, Nick, Jameer Grimsley, DeAndre Robinson, they also finished second for those guys. And when they were looking to make a move, they fell right in Florida's lap. So, but Howard, and like, if I can go back to, what would that have been? December 2022, right? December 2022, before DJ Lagway commits. And you can tell Florida fans back then that fast forward to now, and you're going to have guys like Pup Howard, Cormani McClain, DJ Lagway, LJ McCray, Jameer Grimsley on the roster, DeAndre Robinson, like Jason Zandamela. Like, if you would have known that back then, you'd feel pretty good about the direction of where Florida's headed with the talent that they're added. And, and obviously you didn't get them all at once, and things had to come together through the portal, but you landed them. And Florida's just upgraded several spots now. They've created more competition at positions of need. They should upgrade, quite honestly, at some spots. But now you got to go out there and win with these guys, and you got to put a team together, and you got to create a scheme and game plan that you can go out and win with. But the pieces are in place, and I think from a personnel standpoint, to your point, Nick, they're in the best place that they've been, and they wouldn't be where they're at without the transfer portal. That's for sure.
Yeah, I got to go back and find my my snarky tweet with the Perception Bowl score, because Florida is making a second half comeback in the Perception Bowl. That's another big thing too, like getting off-field wins after the season. Like, they have been hard to come by, few and far between. And, right when Billy Napier took over, it seemed like every 3 days there was a new hire, there was a new something, a commit, and Florida was just in the news cycle in a positive form or fashion weekly. And listen, we're getting into the dead point of the season, May, June, not a lot going on, but outside of recruiting, we'll have some massive, official recruiting weekends coming up. But to get some positivity just around your team, like making me forget that you're 11-14 after 2 years, make me forget about it, baby. Just start getting some positive headlines.
Well, they've been positive this week.
Yeah. Huge week.
The sunglasses are out. You'll never see Billy wear sunglasses, but you'll see him tweet them.
That's crazy. I can't go outside without sunglasses. He never wears them.
Never. Does not wear sunglasses, but
we're going to piss some people off and just open a press conference with that. Ask the hard-hitting questions.
Yeah, he's shining this week, though. I like Russ Callaway has incorporated his own sunglasses tweet, throwing his boy out there with some shades on every time the Gators get a pledge. So, again, kudos to the staff for being able to put this together. Best transfer class yet, probably Florida's best class yet as well. Top to bottom, they've checked a lot of boxes that they came into this cycle wanting to accomplish, and now they got to put it all together as they get ready to face a gauntlet of a 2024 schedule. So that'll put a bow here, I think, on the transfer portal.
And while you guys are here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button. We're here every Thursday. Normally pushed it back because of the expected news to Friday. But we appreciate you guys coming in, hanging out with us.
And then he pushed it back because of the baseball game, doing you a solid, Nick.
He's already ingratiated himself into the culture.
So we got 2 Badger receivers joining Florida, one an actual Badger, and one like Graham Mertz was. So we'll see what.
Real quick. Number 2, Badger War number 2. That is not happening at Florida. A different 5-star has.
He's not getting.
You're not getting number 2, buddy. You might need a new number.
That.
I think 0 is already taken as well.
Yep.
What number? Maybe.
Let's pull up the scout. Let's pull up the roster.
And also Cormani McClain, not wearing number 1. Both number 1s are spoken for on offense and defense.
The numbers game.
Is number 7 available for Cormani? Number 7 is no. Traquise Bridges took number 7. But buddy, numbers 1 through 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Someone's going to be crazy.
Someone's
going to be looking crazy.
Okay. There's a number 8 available on defense, and there's a number 7 available on offense.
Tough.
So I'm gonna say Badger wears 7 and Cormani wears 8.
Listen, if Badger wants 12 because it's a 1-2, I think walk-on Paul Kessler might be looking for a new number.
Well, we'll figure that out, I guess, when we get to fall training camp.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to give him 82, King Malik.
Yeah, and listen, but Frazier's is going on his 14th year in college. He's not giving up a number.
No. Yeah, he can go with 12. He can go with Caleb Douglas's old number. So we'll see, man. That's the least of Florida's worries. The fact that they're having to figure this out, and
you can't put money in like 37.
They have too many good players that want single-digit numbers, and that they've given too many of them out. This is a good problem to have. You want this problem every single year.
Yeah.
So that'll put a bow on Florida's 2024 transfer class. Appreciate all of you for not only following these past couple weeks, but throughout the cycle. Again, take advantage of the code and promo that we got going on right now. If you're not subscribed to Gators Online, go to sign up, put it in UF1, and you will get 2 months for just $1. Nick and I will be back next week to see what Florida's baseball prospects look like. And
we'll know by then.
Yeah, we will know. And
it'll either be a eulogy or a preview. One of the two.
And then we will start to look ahead in the coming weeks and months, 2024 season, breaking down this schedule, breaking down this team, some things that we'll be looking for. Nick, it'll be Florida Miami week before you know it, with a 3:30 kick.
Can't wait.
I want
ABC.
All right, everyone. We'll see you guys next week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Abolverdi. Take care.